And we are wrestling with New Japan G1 Climax Tour 31. It got kicked off earlier today. But we're gonna kind of roll down the participants and kind of review the preview the upcoming matches as well. You ready, Drew?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. This is my Christmas right now. This is my Christmas.
And let's go into. I could find the participants. Oh, here we go. We'll start with the participants in A block. We already kind of talked about what we think is going to happen a little bit last week, but let's go down. The first person in the A block, uh, the the winner of last year and the year before that, Kota Ibushi. Do you think Kota Ibushi has any type of shot of winning this year around, Drew?
I don't think so. I think we got a lot of booking issues in New Japan, to be honest with you. We because of the pandemic. And I don't think you want to put Ishii or not Ishii or Kota Ibushi 3 years in a row winning the G1. No, I don't think he has a chance. To me, he'll maybe probably get to a quarterfinals or maybe even a semifinals, but winning the whole thing out of the A block or being the A block champion, I don't see it.
The next participant, I do agree with you on that. It seems like a bit much if they went 3 years in a row. I mean, 2 years, okay, I get it. They wanted to build him up, but 3 years, it might be a little much.
Because
Um,
remember, just not to cut you off, but remember in 2020 when he won it in 2020, that was the whole story that it was becoming God,
yes,
winning the IC belt and winning the heavyweight belt. It was him becoming God. So I understood him winning last year. Now we don't have that story. It would be more of him regaining the title because of dropping it due to whatever COVID issues or the illness that he had for a while, and he had to relinquish the belt. But I just don't see it with him for a third time. I just don't.
do you think his recent health issues might hinder him during this month-long tournament?
If he's fully healthy, yeah, I don't see there will be a problem. But if I say this, you get a 75% Kota Ibushi, he's arguably one of the best wrestlers in the world, even at 75%. So healthy or not, I think he's going to show out in this tournament, and especially as we run down who's in A block, I predict he's going to have maybe a match of the year candidate in this tournament, but winning it, no.
The next participant, Tomohiro Ishii. Probably not going to win the tournament, but he's definitely going to have more than a few bangers in this tournament. No, Drew?
Yes, whenever I see him on whatever block he's in or whatever night or whatever day he's on, I have to watch his matches because if I don't, I end up reading the spoilers and seeing that no recommended match to watch is an Ishii match, and he doesn't need to win the tournament. This for me in this format, this is where he shows how great of an in-ring talent he is, and no matter who he's in the ring with, there's a potential for him to have a banger and knock it out of the park every time.
And there is some pretty good potential here. I mean, and Tomohiro Ishii has been a constant in New Japan for quite some time. And it kind of seems like the only time he really gets his due and his flowers is in this tournament. You know, last year he was the man that denied Jay White the opportunity to go into the finals. So he has been a factor in this tournament before.
Arguably, for me, when I started watching New Japan, it was right just before Shibata had his freak injury, and Shinsuke Nakamura was still there. And when I started to tune into the G1, every time Ishii was on a card, I had to watch it, like I said before, because I just feel like this is a guy that you could put the IWGP Heavyweight Title on. I always feel like
a lot of people would debate whether or not he's tough enough to hold on to that belt.
No, and I just feel you're right what you're saying, that the only time we're giving him his flowers is in this tournament, and I think he's such more valuable to New Japan. He would be one of those that shuffling the deck chairs for a while, and even if it was him being a transitional champion, to go to for him to face a Jay White, he's so believable in everything that he does. The toughness, the hard hitting, the in-ring work, he is so believable. His presentation, everything that he does is so believable that I don't see why New Japan doesn't put the rocket to this guy. Maybe it's a size thing. I don't know, but I think this is a guy that should arguably have been the IWGP Heavyweight Champion or even the IC Champion time in and time out.
It's because he doesn't talk on the mic. You know, when he does win a main event match, he doesn't, send the crowd home happy. He doesn't have, a catchphrase at the end of the night. He wins his matches, he leaves, and that's as good as it gets. I mean, if there's something that needs to be said in the backstage comments, he does, but he would rather leave it unspoken and leave it in the ring. And I've always felt like that was the only thing that was really holding Tomohiro Ishii back.
You know what? I never saw it that way until you said that, but you make absolutely 100% sense, because it wouldn't be his look and it wouldn't be his work rate. It's true. He can't get on the mic and give like a 3-minute promo and thanking the crowd, and that's why maybe he hasn't won the tournament either. Because you need that. Like Okada can come out and give you a little catchphrase. Naito can do that. Even Shingo can. Zack Saber Jr. speaks English, but with a little bit of Japanese in there. Kenta can do it. So who else is there? Evil. The Tamatunga can do it. Like there's the names I could list off that are
Khan, and he hasn't even had that many at this point.
Yes. So, as a fan of Ishii, I would love to see him get more of a push, but I understand that is the one hindrance. It's not, and it wouldn't be smart to put him with like somebody that can speak for him. I think you're right with his character. He's like the wrestler's wrestler.
Yes.
So he does all of his stuff is in ring. I'm gonna come in there. I'm gonna do my stuff, and I'm gonna go home. And I think maybe that's why I enjoy the character, because it's just simple. I'm a wrestler. I do my talking in the ring, and I can understand as a company you're gonna want a guy that you can easily bring out to your morning shows or do press or the little press conference or send the crowd home happy. So yeah, Ishii could win the tournament. He always has bangers, but I understand why he will never be like a top tier guy in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
The next participant, Yana. And, this is the guy that people always say, why the hell is he in this tournament? Why does he exist? Why does he even have a chance of winning? 2 years ago, Toriyama beat eventual winner Kota Ibushi, Tatsuya Naito, and Jon Moxley, all in the same tournament. Last year, he almost came close to actually winning it. Not so much last year, but Toriyama always is that dark horse of, he might not win, but he will break your bracket if you choose somebody over him. But what say you, Drew?
He is like when you watch March Madness for basketball here, the NCAA tournament. He's one of those like 11, 12 seed guys, like teams that will always bust your bracket on night one, and I think that's his role in this tournament. That it doesn't matter what block you put him in. That's his role. His role is to be the bracket breaker, and that's fine. And do I think he's winning this tournament? Hell no. Do I think he's going to bring his funny, haha, comedic side of wrestling at points? Yes. But I think we all know what Toriyano's job is, and his job is to be the bracket buster. So you go in there, he doesn't win his first 2 matches. Then night 3, he beats Naito. And you're like, what? That's his job. So he does an amazing job at what he does. And to be honest with you, like I said, don't see him winning the tournament. I just see him doing his usual stick and breaking the brackets as usual.
I mean, he's in, and we'll talk about him coming up. He's going to wrestle eventually Shingo Takagi. And, it wouldn't surprise me if he got the W on Shingo. I mean, and that's just, if you're saying it wouldn't surprise me if Toriyama beat the top guy in your company, that says a lot about Toriyama, no?
Of course it does. It's like when 1, 2, 3 Kid beat Razor Ramon.
Yes.
Or when the Hurricane beat The Rock. You don't expect it to happen, but because you position the main event guys as kind of untouchables and Toriyama is like a jobber. So when the jobber beats the main event guy, it means something. Like, oh my gosh, he was on that night. So yeah, if he beats a Shingo, and then that's something where Shingo needed the points to move on, and Toriyama beats him the last night or whatever night they're wrestling each other, and oh my gosh, Shingo now doesn't go to the semifinals, or he doesn't go to the A block finals because of Toriyama, it means something. That's what a lot of wrestling fans have been saying over the last few years. The titles need to mean something. When I climb the ladder for the briefcase, it has to mean something. When I win the G1 tournament, it has to mean something. So yeah, Toriyama beating a Shingo or a Saber Jr. or a Kenta means something because he's like a lower mid-card guy. So him beating a mid-carder or even a main eventer, that means something. So then it gives that tournament legitimacy going forward.
And we talked about that. Ishii is probably going to have a couple of bangers in there. That are probably going to go 20-minute plus. Toriyama matches only go maybe 5 minutes, if that. So it's kind of breath of fresh air as well.
Yeah.
That brings us to the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, the Dragon, Shingo Takagi. This is his 3rd G1. He did decently in his last 2, but he wasn't champion then. How do you see him faring this time around?
Just looking at who's in A block, and like last time we spoke about the tournament going into it. To be honest with you, my question is, does he really need it? You know what I mean?
The champion never needs to win the G1.
Like it's like going to North America and saying like, oh, Brock Lesnar's in the Royal Rumble. Does he really need to win the Royal Rumble as the champion? Unless it's his belt is on the line, I could understand that. But I don't think Shingo needs to win this tournament unless you're trying to tell the story that at one of the nights of Wrestle Kingdom, our good friend Will Ospreay, the real world champion, as he claims himself, faces Shingo as the winner of the G1, and they unify that belt. That's a possibility. But to be honest with you, I think Shingo's gonna have some decent matches in this tournament. Maybe a couple bangers with Ibushi and Ishii and Zack Saber Jr. But to be honest with you, I don't see him winning the full tournament coming up, or even maybe being in the A block final, but not winning the whole thing.
Well, the one thing that's always interesting in the G1 is when the champion does lose a match in the G1, it sets up maybe his next two, maybe three title defenses before leading up to Wrestle Kingdom. So out of the everybody that's in this tournament so far, who do you see maybe getting that W on Shingo to have a main event title shot against him down the line?
Maybe Kenta, maybe a Naito, maybe a Jeff Cobb. Sonata is another name.
Cobb and
Well,
Sonata are in B block.
the B block, sorry.
Yeah.
So out of A block, Ibushi, Naito, Ishii, Saber Jr., maybe one of Tangaloa, Kenta, Gradle Khan. So yeah, I see many names coming out of there that could be his next three challengers before we get into 2022. And you're right that usually if the champion's in the tournament, it usually sets up his next 3 to 4 guys that he has to face before he gets to Wrestle Kingdom. So any of those names that I mentioned could be his next group of challengers coming forward.
And the name that I'm looking at is Great Khan at this point. I think that beating Shingo would definitely kind of legitimize him to a degree that he could really use. Obviously winning the championship is not in the cards for him right now, but it would definitely bring him up. Selflessly, I kind of want to see Tangaloa get a W on him. Kind of go into a little singles run, but odds are they're not going to do that. That brings us to Shingo's Lij stablemate, Tetsuya Naito. Um, Naito mentioned that he won the tournament in 2013, 2016, and he will win it in 2021. He's the Olympic man, so to speak, every 4 years. Do you see that being the case, or do you think that Naito might be taking a back seat this year?
I think Naito's taking a backseat this year, to be honest with you. Obviously, we know what he can do. We know he is an amazing talent, but I think this year we got other guys in this A block that need to be kind of pushed forward. We've seen Naito on top. I'm glad to see him tagging and all that kind of stuff when you do tune into New Japan, but going forward, I don't think he needs to be in the finals. I don't think he needs to do anything like that. To be honest with you, he could have one of those bad showings where he's like just above Toriyama, to be honest with you. I would be fine with that.
Kaliko always says Naito's in that position where he's kind of higher than the company itself. People will forgive him if he doesn't win because they love him so much. He's the Hulk Hogan of the company. I don't see him having the worst showing, but I see him just missing the A block finals, depending on who he wrestles in the finals, which we'll get to when we get there. Next guy in the tournament, Zack Saber Jr., ZSJ. Definitely one of the more interesting names that's always came out of the G1 just because of his style. But he's doing more tag team things than singles as of right now. So do you see that affecting his G1 performance this year?
No, I don't think it's going to affect his performance. I just think his focus is going to be more on the tag team. Yeah, he'll have a decent showing in the tournament like he always does, and like you were saying, his style it fits this tournament well. But I just don't see him being one of those top 4 out of the A block, to be honest with you. I see him more focusing on his tag team stuff and just having a great showing in the G1 tournament.
The Gradle Khan. He actually debuted on the last night of last year's G1. So this is really our first kind of preview of what he can actually do in this tournament against um 9 of the best wrestlers in the world. So do you see that him stepping up and kind of showing that he could he could hang with these guys, or do you see that kind of just finishing him at the brim of it, kind of not quite there? You
Honestly, I
understand what I
think,
mean?
yeah, I follow you. I think this, for the Great Okan, is his coming out party. I think this is where he can really, really show what he has to offer to New Japan and the New Japan audience. So, do I see him going to to the finals of A block? No, but I think this is where we actually get to see who the real Okan really is when it comes to facing the top talent in the world in the G1 Climax tournament.
And like I said, I see that if he doesn't do maybe fantastic things in this tournament, I see him at least getting a win over Shingo Takagi. That brings us to our next participant, Kenta. What do you see Kenta doing in this tournament?
I'm gonna have to second my thoughts with the Great Okan. I also think Kenta needs some type of showing out. To be honest with you, since he's returned to New Japan, it's like he's been hot and cold, and I think maybe his little one match in AEW kind of cooled him off a little bit. To be honest with you, and I think this tournament will kind of heat him back up. So if he decides to come back to North America and step through the forbidden door, it kind of helps. So this tournament would be another guy that needs to show out and show us what he really can do, even though we kind of know what he can do because he's arguably one of the most influential wrestlers of his generation. But I just think he needs this tournament. He needs to put a little bit more shine on himself to make himself look like a main event superstar.
And I'll get to what my thoughts are on Kenta when we get there, but um, you're absolutely right. He was doing maybe some great things last year in the G1, and with that briefcase being more of a champion with no championship than John Moxley was with a championship. Um, and it kind of just when he jobbed, essentially jobbing to John Moxley, it kind of made him cold after that, and there wasn't a lot for him to do. But I think you're right. I think he might be doing some great things in this tournament. Um, a surprise of this tournament, Tungaloa. Um, Tungaloa hasn't had a whole lot of singles matches in New Japan as a whole. His whole long way being there. Now he's gonna have 9. What do you see Tungaloa doing?
Another guy that's gonna remember. I remember speaking to you guys earlier this year, and I was talking about New Japan needing to shuffle the deck chairs a little bit because, like I said, the same guys have been on top. So if Tongaloa has a decent showing as a singles wrestler, I'm not saying you break up the Gorillas of Destiny at any time or any point. This kind of reminds me of when you watch Ring of Honor, when Jay Briscoe and Mark Briscoe kind of go off and do a singles thing, even though they are the Briscoe brothers. I think this is where Tongaloa can actually show that he is a credible singles wrestler and can actually go after. I'm not saying he's going to be the next IWGP champion, but there's the never open weight championship he can go for. There's also the US title he could go for. So again, this is another guy that you need to heat up and need to protect coming out of this tournament to make him look like he's another superstar in the making for New Japan.
I do hope that's the case. Rather than him just kind of maybe being jobbed out. You know what I mean?
Totally. That was my other side of it would be like you could easily put him in the Toriyama situation that you job him all. He ends up winning like 2 out of the 9 matches. He's not ready for the single spot. You could do it that way as well, but I just think we need some new faces on top of New Japan. We can't keep going back to the well with Ibushi and Naito and Tanahashi and Okada. We can't be just shifting those guys around. We got to start building some new guys that people can get behind. And to me, the Guerrillas of Destiny are one of those tag teams that are very, very, very over. They are very flamboyant. They're very in your face. But now to showcase them in a singles role, both of them, because one's in A, one's in B, this is the time where you can actually say, yeah, they are arguably the best tag team we have in New Japan, but they can also go as singles wrestlers. So this would be the best time to heat up these guys. So going forward, they look like $1 million coming out of this tournament. Even if you don't win the tournament, just looking halfway decent within it, having a winning record or anything like that makes you look credible. So it's like, okay, so if he decides, hey, I'm coming back to America and I'm going to go on AEW or I'm going to go on New Japan Strong and I'm going to try to get that New Japan Strong title, he looks credible by using this tournament.
And the last guy in the tournament, Yujiro. Let's do one of Kaliko's favorite things. What's your favorite fruit, Drew?
Squash.
Yep. So, all that being said, we got 10 guys here. Who wins the A block?
Winner of the A block is going to be, I'm going to say, Shingo Takagi.
I am going with Kenta.
Okay.
If you're going to pull the trigger on Kenta, I feel like now would kind of be that time. And I kind of feel if Jay White was going to be in this tournament, you could make the argument that he might win his block. He's not. We're gonna be talking about Evil in a moment. He's kind of doing his own thing. So Kenta being the sole legitimate pick for Bullet Club to actually do something in this tournament, I see that might be the case. So let's get into B block. First out, he's the IWGP United States champion, Hiroshi Tanahashi. What do you think Tanahashi is going to do in his 21st G1 Climax?
I don't want to use the word squash, but to be honest with you, I could care less about Tanahashi, to be honest with you. I don't think he is what Ric Flair is to North American wrestling. Like, yeah, you're great. Yeah, you're good in the ring. Yeah, you can be on top, but it becomes overdone. So I just think he's going to do his regular thing, have a decent record, and maybe make it to the block final. But other than that, I could care less about Tanahashi.
Now we talked at length about this guy last week on the show. Kazutska Okada. We talked about if this being his redemption story and how this winning this G1 could kind of propel him back to being the Rainmaker. Um, if that doesn't happen, where do you see Okada going?
Honestly, I'm looking at it like this. If this forbidden door, it's this darn COVID. COVID has screwed up everything for everybody. Because I'm looking at it, if this forbidden door is legitly open, Okada has accomplished pretty much everything he can in New Japan. I'm not saying he leaves New Japan, right?
Yep.
I'm saying this is a guy that could easily one night show up on an AEW Dynamite or AEW Rampage, and all he has to do, his music plays, and if Kenny Omega is still the champ, or it's Bryan Danielson or whoever the champ is, Darby Allin, etc., and all he has to do is point, and that's it. That's just my creative booking 101 in my head. But to speak about the tournament, I really think the story they're trying to tell is him getting back to being the Rainmaker, the guy that was the anchor and the face of New Japan Pro Wrestling for the last few years. So I think he goes to the block final. That's my prediction right now. I think he goes to the block final, and honestly, I think he wins the B block. But other than that, he's gonna do what he does, and I think the story, like we were talking about on the last episode that we chatted, is that it is his redemption, because he's fallen totally off of the map of New Japan. And I think this tournament, like we were talking about those other guys that are in the A block that could heat them up, I think Okada is one of those guys that need a little bit more heating up. And in the B block, his story is the best story to tell to get the tournament over by using Okada.
I couldn't agree more. Another guy in this tournament, Hiroki Goto. Probably somebody that's not gonna win the tournament, but Goto has had some low-key bangers in the G1. Maybe not as talked about as the Ishii ones, but he does put on a great performance every year.
That's what I honestly see that going forward. I honestly see that for him. He's in that same Ishii role that you're going to get some bangers out of him. He doesn't have to win the tournament, and he's going to make other guys look like $1 million coming out of it. So he's the B block version of what Ishii is to the A block.
Next up, Yoshihashi. What are your thoughts on Yoshihashi, Drew?
I gotta use the words of my good friend Kaliko. Fuck Yoshihashi.
Could agree more. Last year's finalist with Kota Ibushi, Sonata. Sonata had some heat on him last year, and it kind of got him to the finals. Do you see him kind of carrying that momentum, or do you think it's going to cool off at this point?
I think he carries the momentum into this year's tournament, like last year. It's like what we were saying about Mr. Ibushi, like him winning back-to-back years. I don't think Sonata's going to win it, but I think Sonata's another guy that's in this tournament that will give you bangers as usual. And to me, have him maybe even making the block final, to be honest with you.
I was just going to say that myself. I could see it coming down between Okada and Sonata, and just one little key factor kept them away from each other that separated Sonata from Okada. A dark horse, nonetheless, Taichi. He had a decent showing last year. He even beat Minoru Suzuki, had one of the most talked about matches in the G1 with Kota Ibushi, where they kicked each other 80 times in a row. But do you think that singles momentum has kind of drifted off, and he's just a tag team guy now?
I just think he is a body because we couldn't get a lot of the foreigners in due to COVID. I just think he's a body. I think you just throw him in there because arguably, we all know if there was no COVID, you would see Jay White, you would have seen Will Ospreay in it. It's just, for me, it's just Tai Chi's just a body to be thrown in there. We need to fill out the two blocks, and I just look at him. He could be one of those guys that get driven down the line that are just floundering around in the tournament.
An interesting name in this tournament, Tamatunga. He's had some low-key interesting matches. He had the one G1 I saw him in, he did pretty decently, and well, the two. Maybe not a guy that is going to win the G1, but definitely a guy that's going to store it up. And he might actually be the Toriyama of the B block, in my opinion. Do you see that happening, or do you see him just being maybe another body to fill out the block?
I see what you're saying. I totally agree with what you're saying, that he is the Toriyama. He'll be the block breaker, like bracket breaker. I really see that. I don't see he's just a body, and I'm not trying to discredit anybody that's in this tournament, because to me it's arguably the best pro wrestling tournament that we have.
Oh yeah.
I just think I think he's gonna get over more than a Tai Chi would, to be honest with you. And I like the fact that you said he's like the Toriyama of the B block. I totally see the same thing.
Now we got the head of the House of Pancakes. No, Torture. Yeah, Torture. Evil. Which is a new kind of branch off of Bullet Club. It seems like Evil won the championship from Naito. He dropped the belt to Naito, and he hasn't done much since. Do you think that this is going to be where Evil kind of gets back on top? He possibly we see the House of Torture become its own faction, or is this just another floundering performance for a guy that should have been in Bullet Club to begin with?
Your third point. That's exactly how I felt about him when he turned. I'm like, I do not believe you as a main eventer. You haven't given me anything as a main eventer. They threw you in the most over faction in the history of factions, because honestly, the Bullet Club has transcended 3 organizations across the globe in some way, shape, or form. You got guys from the Bullet Club in WWE. You got guys in the Bullet Club that pretty much started AEW, and then guys still in the Bullet Club over in New Japan. I just think he's a
Impact as well.
And Impact as well. I just think he's a floundering guy, and then giving him a new faction and pretty much calling it the International House of Pancakes. It's just I think this is the time where you cut your losses. You tried with Evil, and it just didn't work.
And I just made the joke House of Pancakes, but when I said House of Terror and not House of Torture, that was a legitimate slip up.
You can tell it's not really important, like how I feel about Evil. And to my point, also, I just feel he's another body in there. Just throw him in there, because we don't have who we want to have in the tournament, so we'll just throw him in there. We know he'll do decent stuff, but I just don't. I think they put the rocket on him a little too soon, and expected him to carry New Japan, and he wasn't, and his shoulders weren't ready for it.
Next guy in the tournament, Jeff Cobb. this isn't his first time in the tournament, and he didn't do necessarily great last year. But it seems like they're kind of giving Cobb that little rub, that little push. Do you see him actually doing well that we could maybe see him in the main event picture? Or do you see that they'll treat him the same like they have in this tournament prior to him joining United Empire?
I think this is his coming out party. I really believe this is where we'll actually see the true Jeff Cobb, that he can be a main event player in New Japan. I really think he's my dark horse in Block B. To me, he would be the guy that surprises everybody and could even roll right into the B block final. To be honest with you, he is my dark horse. I just think this is the time where, without having Ospreay there, this is the time for him to show that he's a main event status guy.
I do agree with you. I see that Sonata might be the guy that causes Jeff Cobb that that B block finals, and maybe start something between Sonata and Cobb. Obviously, he came off a big win against Okada. I don't see him beating Okada in the G1, especially if Okada wins the whole shebang. But we'll see. We will definitely see what happens with Jeff Cobb. Um, Maybe a warm body, maybe a cold body, maybe just a body in general. Chase Owens.
Yeah, he's a body. He's just thrown in there. I don't see a problem with it. I see he's a young guy. He's probably the jobber of B block. He'll probably get a sneaky win here and there, maybe over Evil, maybe over a Tamatunga. But to me, he's just a body.
Let me ask you this: who wins? Chase Owens or Yoshihashi?
Chase Owens.
Interesting. And night one was earlier today, so that's already in the history books. But by the time we record this, night two will be completely done as well. But let's kind of review it anyway, preview it. Block B, the first match or last match, main event, whatever you want to call it, is Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Okada. This is the second time they. Actually, no, wait. Who wins the B block?
Oh, who wins the B block? I'm saying Okada wins the B block.
I agree. So you got Shingo winning the A block, Okada winning the B block. Who wins the whole shebang?
For me, it's Okada wins the whole thing. I like the story. I'm a story guy. I'm a storylines guy. So I like the story. It's the redemption of Okada and him now winning the briefcase, and now he can strut his stuff going into Wrestle Kingdom, where we can get all the pageantry, and he can come out as the Rainmaker and become again the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. And then hopefully COVID slows down for the damn world, and we can actually get the damn dream matches that we want to see on North American soil.
I have Kenta winning A block, and I have Okada winning B block, and I have Kenta winning the whole thing.
All I'm saying is, don't hold me to it. Don't hold me to who, because this is the thing with the G1. You can watch day 1, day 2, by day 5, you're like, okay, throw everything out the window. Just don't lock me in as my choices, because to be honest with you, I have this feeling that I'm going to be totally off on who wins this whole thing.
Well, we're kind of on the same page with Okada. So, and I've correctly predicted the finals like the last 2 years. I haven't predicted the winner, but I have predicted the finals. So we're not too far off. So with our picks, but if you're not locking it in, I won't hold you to it.
Thank you very much.
We are on night 2, block B action. Tanahashi versus Okada. Who wins?
I'm going to say Okada wins there.
Couldn't agree more. Hiroki Goto versus Taichi.
I'm going to have to say Taichi there.
I agree. Sonata versus Tamatunga.
That's Sonata wins that one.
Yes. Cobb versus Chase Owens.
I'll say Jeff Cobb.
Yoshihashi versus Evil.
Evil.
Fuck Yoshihashi. And that will be the night 2, so we'll see what happens. Well, you already know what happens, because this is coming out after that it airs. But something that didn't air yet, September 23rd, it's A block action once again. Toriyama versus Gradle. Who wins?
Gradle.
I agree. Kenta versus Yujiro.
Kenta.
Naito versus Tangaloa.
I'm gonna go with an upset here. I think Tangaloa gets the upset.
You know, I was looking at that as well. If Tangaloa is not going to win literally any other match in the tournament, I feel like this would be the one that he might actually pull off. Kota Ibushi versus Tomohiro Ishii.
Yeah, that's going to be a recommended match, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna give the edge to Ibushi on that one.
Agreed. And the main event of that night, Shingo Takagi versus Zack Saber Jr.
And I'm gonna say Takagi wins that, and that probably be another recommended match to watch.
I agree as well. And you know, there's only one more night before this before we have to record the next episode. Let's review that one as well.
All right.
September 24th, we got B block action again. Tanahashi versus Goto.
Tanahashi wins that one.
Tamatunga versus Chase Owens.
Tamatunga.
Yoshihashi versus Jeff Cobb.
Jeff Cobb.
Fuck Yoshihashi. Sonata versus Taichi.
Sonata.
Okada versus Evil.
I like throwing a little upset in there, so I'm gonna say Evil goes over on that one, because Okada has to falter a little bit in the tournament, so I think Evil picks up the win there.
And if he does win the tournament, he's going to have to defend it at least once. And you know, Evil is the king of opportunities. So I see that could happen. All right. And that will conclude our coverage of the G1 New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax 31 Max to Max. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me once again, Drew.
Hey, no problem, man. It's always a good time to talk about great things in the world of Poro Resu. A little bit of Japanese there for you.
And show off. And once again, where can we find Drew on your show and on social media as well?
All right, let's start with the Grateful Yardie podcast. It's available on Anchor.fm, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Spotify, and wherever else you get your favorite podcasts. For me, your boy Drew, you can find me on Instagram. That is Drew_Wrestling99. And on Twitter, DWrestling99.
And of course, if you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, comment, vote on YouTube and Castbox. This episode was sponsored by Rogue Energy. Use promo code Wrestling with E for 10% off your next purchase. And specifically, this episode was sponsored by NinjaBuzz.io, connecting podcasters with advertisers. Give them a look, and you could even find the website in the description of the video below as well. Join us this Wednesday as we interview Miss Hana. And if you want to find us on social media, we are at Wrestling with E, both on Twitter and Instagram for all your Wrestling with entertainment news, interviews, and everything else. You can follow me individually at JamesJ993. You can find Kaliko at I am Kaliko, Scooter at at Scooter Dust, and yeah, that will do it for this week. For our special guest, Drew, Kaliko Yacht, Scooter Dust, and James Shea, and this has been Wrestling with Entertainment.